Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Hope you're doing really well. From wherever you are in isolation or self-quarantine or any of that stuff, big hugs all around the world. Hope you're doing really well. Today we're talking about learning songs. Now I know this is a problem, not a problem. I know a lot of people have been through this and find it difficult to learn songs, and it takes a long time. I was at a gig back when gigs were still a thing, and this guy came up to me afterwards, like, "Oh, hey, I know you from YouTube." I'm like, "Oh, that's so cool!" Like, it's very rare that I like meet someone in person, so I was like totally feeling like a celebrity. So we started talking about bass stuff, and he goes to me, "Yeah, I've got a gig coming up." I'm like, "Oh, cool, that's awesome. When is it?" Thinking like maybe I'd be able to go like watch it if it was like if I wasn't a gigging myself. And so he's like, "Oh, it's about like 2 or 3 months away." And then his face got real dark. He got real kind of like, "Oh." And he goes, "Oh, but I'm kind of worried about it." And I go, "Oh, okay. Why is that?" He's like, "Oh, I'm not sure I'm gonna have enough time to learn all the songs." And he said it was just like a 10 song set. So if it's 2 to 3 months away, that's like 60 to 90 days. So say 70. That's one song every 7 days, one song a week, basically, which is doable. It's very doable. It's reasonably doable, even for someone that's not super experienced. So I thought, okay, maybe he's playing super hard music. Maybe he's in like some like Dream Theater tribute band, like playing like crazy, crazy music. But it wasn't that wasn't the case. He was just playing like a classic rock set, like playing like AC/DC songs and like all that stuff, like some Led Zeppelin. Nothing like crazy, crazy technical or tricky. So I thought, okay, well, maybe then maybe he was just starting out. Like he seemed pretty knowledgeable. Like we'd talk about bass stuff, and he seemed like he knew what he was talking about. It didn't seem like he was like a day one beginner. So I asked him, like, how long have you been playing? He says, "Oh, a couple of years now." Like, I can't remember exactly what he said. This was a while ago. So I'm like, okay, so it wasn't that either. So I'm like, that's super interesting. And then we like talked a bit more, and then eventually I finally like stumbled across like the reason that he was struggling with this whole thing. And I would love to hear in the live chat what you guys think it could possibly be. So why do you think this guy who had he's been playing for a while? I mean, I hadn't seen his playing, but Dale Edgar says Jarko cover set. Not quite, not quite. Just a regular classic rock. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. The mistake he could have been when it comes to learning songs. It was very, very specific, and it's something that I used to do a lot more than I do now. And it's something that by the way, I've had this discussion with like multiple bass players, and like people email me and say, "Oh yeah, I find it really hard to learn songs." And then it's usually the case that they're making this one crucial mistake. So let me know in the live chat what you reckon it is. I'll be super interested to see what you guys think. And in the meantime, let me just take care of some. Dale Edgar says practice. Well, this is the thing. I asked him like what his practice was like, and he's practicing like every day. I think he said like it wasn't like crazy. It wasn't like doing like 8-hour days every day, but he was definitely like practicing regularly, like 30 minutes to an hour, like on the regular, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Dave says he was trying to learn songs note for note and couldn't retain anything. Brock says time management. Thomas says, oh, whoops, wrong one. Thomas says trying to learn every note perfectly. Rob says he was trying to get it exactly as it's played on the recording. Sundog Jen says memorizing tabs. All right, let me just do one thing really quick. Well, I'm going to get real fancy here. And I'm going to do this. Oh, look at this. Now, you guys are, by the way, killing this. So like the question was the biggest mistake bassists make when it comes to learning songs. These guys are awesome. So Rob nailed it. Was just trying to get exactly as it's played on recording. Thomas says trying to learn every note perfectly. David says trying to learn songs note for note and couldn't retain anything. This is exactly the mistake this guy was making. So he was exactly what John's saying, looking for perfection. And I mean, perfection is not necessarily a bad thing, but it can get in the way of very good things or even pretty good things. Now, yeah, learning the bass line 100% note for note. This is, now when I say this is a mistake, there are some caveats. Nothing is ever like, only a Sith deals in absolutes, I'm sure you guys know. Now, there is huge value in transcription. So learning a bass line note for note, exactly as it's played on a recording, is a hugely valuable thing for you to do. Like if there was one thing that I could recommend that you do to improve your bass playing, like by far and away, transcription would be the probably number one thing, because all the answers are in the music. All the answers are in the music. You can go to the music, ask the question, and the music is going to spit out an answer. So this is where you recreate the exact notes of the original. So you play the exact notes that, for example, Paul McCartney played on like the entire White Album. You also try and recreate the exact tone of the original. So whether that's, you know, going down the gear rabbit hole, or maybe you like fiddle with your own things or change your strings, or, you know, even get entirely new setups, new rigs, new basses, new amps, all that kind of stuff. You trying to recreate the tone of the original, and it's also where you recreate the exact feel, the exact groove of the original as well. Now that's you know, this takes a long time. Jamal says perfection can be discouraging. Exactly. Definitely. This is also something. Yeah, Chad says he always played with chord sheets. That can actually definitely hinder your ability to start memorizing things, because you start using the sheets as a crutch, and it gets, you know, very tricky to kind of bring yourself out of that, which can really suck. But yeah, so you've got the notes. You know, you play the important parts of the bass line. You try and learn every single variation, every single fill in the entire song. You might even buy transcription books, like, for example, Beatles transcription books, like have every single note that Paul McCartney seemingly ever played in his entire life. The tone, like I said, you can go down the rabbit hole of gear, change up your technique, try and get the exact sound. And of course, the groove. You might realize that the bass player in the recording might be pushing a little bit or pulling on the groove, so you try and do the same. Now, this is a hugely valuable skill. I would absolutely recommend that you use this. However, if you're like doing something that's, you know, not, I'll go through the exceptions first. That'll probably make more sense. Now, there are a couple places you can and absolutely should do this, you know, outside of, you know, just doing it for pleasure or just doing it to level up your game in terms of your bass playing or anything like that. So number one is with iconic bass lines. If you're playing a song that has a super iconic bass line, then you better play that bass line. Yeah, you better play it, and play it at least pretty closely. Like, for example, if someone said, let's play Another One Bites the Dust, and you played something kind of like Another One Bites the Dust, like it had the same like kind of groove, same kind of chord sequence, but it wasn't the right notes. Like, say someone said, "Oh, hey, play the Another One Bites the Dust." Like, oh, how's it go? Like, oh, well, it's like kind of an E minor chord, and it kind of goes to an A minor chord, and you're like, that's correct, but it's not Another One Bites the Dust. Same with like what's another reason? Like Money. Someone's like, oh, play Money. It's like a rock song in B minor in 7/4, and you'd be like, that's correct, but it's not right. Like, yeah, it's not Money. It's not the song. So if you're playing like really iconic, a song with a really iconic bass line, then you better learn that bass line note for note. The second place you probably should play it exactly, and play it, you know, exactly as it is in the recording, transcribe it, is with riffs. If you're playing, especially if you're playing like a riff with another instrument, it's going to sound really messy if you play something that's completely different. So what's an example? Like, yeah, at the end of the Muse song Hysteria, it's playing like this riff with the guitar, like in unison. Actually, I think it starts on the E, actually. I can't remember. But yeah, it's playing a riff in unison with the guitar. If you're playing something else, it's just going to sound weird if like there's these two things going on, when it should feel like this big, powerful thing that's like, it's going to feel really weird. Same with even with like things that are more chill, like if you played something, like if someone's like, oh, let's play Sunshine of Your Love, and it's like a D blues riff at this tempo, and you're like, again, that's correct, but it's not right. So if you're playing riffs, you probably should absolutely learn the riff note for note as it appears on the recording. The last place you should probably do this is if you're playing in like a tribute band or a tribute show. Like, that's the whole point. You don't want I mean, someone's probably always going to come up to you afterwards and be like, I think you'll find that Paul McCartney actually played the C on his E string, not his A string, or like, you know, something like that, something really small that is just doesn't really matter, but you know, people know this stuff. Now, those are the three places you can and absolutely should transcribe things note for note. Like, it's essential if you're going to do this kind of stuff. However, in my story from before, none of these things applied to this dude. He wasn't. Some of the bass lines were like, kind of iconic. There may have been some riffs, but he wasn't in a tribute band or tribute show. He was playing like standard, like pub rock material, which doesn't necessarily mean that you need to play everything exactly note for note. Now, when learning songs, do not let perfect get in the way of great or even pretty good. I think there was someone, I think maybe it was Jamal, I can't remember, was saying something like that. But yeah, it's totally a thing. Just as only a Sith is an absolute. Yeah, this is one of the great, what's the word? Paradoxes of the prequel trilogy. It's great. It's so good. Yeah, and Rob's saying if you've watched The Best Impersonators, they captured the essence of who they're portraying. Exactly. This is exactly right. Yeah, Rob is on the money with this one for sure. Now, let me, whoops, there we go. Okay, so let's move on. So if transcription and like getting everything perfect, absolutely note for note from the recording is kind of the mistake, the quote unquote wrong way to do things, what would the right way be to do things? And it's exactly what Rob was saying before. You want to capture the essence of the song. So that means, getting things mostly right. Doesn't have to be exactly, doesn't have to be every single fill, doesn't have to be every single slide, doesn't have to be every single variation fill played in the entire song. You can just capture the main parts and kind of channel someone rather than being an exact carbon copy, which, like I said, there's a place for that, but it's usually not. Most cases, you don't really need to do that. So how can you learn songs faster? How can you do this stuff without, getting so into the weeds? Take a bigger picture view. And that means looking at the big picture stuff in all this kind of stuff. And in this case, we can talk about form, the form of the song. So what happens when? This is a really good way of thinking about learning songs and kind of breaking things down into more manageable pieces. So rather than thinking about, okay, first I've got to play an A, and then I'm playing a C, and then I play a D. Like, you don't want to be stuck in the weeds like that. You don't want to be stuck in the forest stuck in the trees and miss the forest kind of thing. So you chunk everything down. So when we're talking about form, we talk about things like, choruses, pre-choruses, bridges, verses, intros, outros, all that kind of stuff. And if you can think of big picture stuff, it makes it very easy to learn songs very fast because a lot of songs will share the same form. So, for example, pop song forms are very, very common, and they go something like this. So usually start with an intro. Actually, I'll chuck this over to the live chat. What are the like prime examples of things to use in pop songs? So what comes after the intro? There's obviously, even the intro could be optional. Like, it might just go straight into something. So this could be optional. Optional. So what's going to come? Pardon me. What's going to come after the intro? Oh, yeah. John says, if you see a band of play live, good chance they won't play exactly. Yeah, exactly. So if you're playing like, if you're watching like the actual artist, chances are they're going to be playing it differently anyway. Yeah, totally. So we get an intro, which is optional. Yeah, Thomas is absolutely right here. Talking about chunking down, great way to memorize large pieces, and yeah, totally. Dale Edgar says verse, chorus, verse. Yeah, definitely. So verse, chorus, verse. And what's going to happen after the next verse? Probably going to be a chorus again, right? Now, usually I'm speaking in very broad general strokes here. Usually what happens after the second chorus, which may be doubled, you're going to get some kind of bridge. It might be, I can't spell today. Going to get some kind of bridge. It might be completely new material. It might be recycled material. It might be like playing a guitar solo over the chorus chords. It might be like a rap break. It might be anything you could think of. It's going to be like new material, though. It's not going to be verse material. It's not going to be chorus material. It's going to be something new, and it's usually not going to last very long. And then after that, you could get any number of things. What's really common is to go straight back into choruses and finish the song there. This is like the very basic kind of pop song form. This is kind of what it's going to be. Now, there are other optional things you can put in there. So, for example, you might put pre-choruses before the chorus. So you have intro, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, and then verse. You'd have another pre-chorus right here. Pre-chorus, Man, what is going on with the spelling today? Pre-chorus, chorus, bridge, and then after the bridge, you might have like a reprise of earlier material. So I might have like go back to like the second verse or something, or the first verse, and be like more chill. There's a bit of flexibility in this form with the optional stuff as well, but this makes it very, very easy. Instead of learning, okay, I've got to go from A to C to D, like just learn the chunks and then just put them in the right order. So, for example, what's a good example of this? What's that Bon Jovi, the famous one? Whoa, what happened? Living on a Prayer. That's it. This follows this exactly. So we start with an intro. It's like really moody synth patches and all that kind of stuff. Then the bass line starts, and then we get that lasts for like a minute or something. It's a really long intro. Then we get the verse. Johnny used to walk on the docks. I'm not going to sing. Don't worry about that. Then we get a pre-chorus. Oh, say we gotta hold on to what we got. Turns out I'm singing more. Then we get the chorus. Whoa, oh wait. Whoa, we have breathed. I'm not going to sing that high. Then we get the chorus. Then that's what we need to know for that part. So we have a verse, pre-chorus, chorus. Then we get the same thing. We actually get like a little break in there of like 8 bars. I think of just instrumental stuff, just on that. But even then, that's kind of like the intro. It's the same kind of thing. And then we get a repeat. We get verse, pre-chorus, chorus. Actually, let me just move this up a little bit so you can see the whole thing. Oh, whoops. There we go. Verse, pre-chorus, chorus. And then we get the bridge. The bridge in this case goes the guitar solo. That kind of stuff. And then we get what happens after the bridge. In this case, we actually get a reprise of the pre-chorus before we get choruses out, which happens with the key change and all that stuff. So you might think of this like have a like 5 minute long song. You might think, oh man, I have to learn like 5 whole minutes worth of music note by note. But you don't. You have to learn the individual chunks and just put them in the right order. And the right order is, I mean, I'm not going to say it's the same for every single pop song, but there's a lot of overlap right here. So you definitely want to think about all that kind of stuff. Next, you also have things like the AABA form. This is like super common in jazz music. So think of songs like I got rhythm, I got music, I got my Man, it's really hard to like play a walking bass line and sing at the same time. I haven't tried that before. At least not like that. Anyway, but that would be an A section, like an 8-bar A section. I got rhythm, I got music, I got my girl who could ask for anything more. All that kind of stuff. That's like a discrete A section. So instead of having to learn this whole 32-bar form part by part, note by note, you can just be like, okay, there's an A section. There's an 8-bar discrete section. I can just repeat every time there's an A. There's an A, B, A. Like the AABA form is like the form's in the name. It's right there. It's A, and then a B, and then an A. And the B section in this case is the I'm in trouble. I don't mind him. Don't know the words. Something, and then back to the B section. So it's just 2 things, 2 chunks of music that you can just put together, and then it works really, really well. Super common in jazz music. Not as common these days, but if you do play a lot of jazz or like a lot of musical theater, you're going to find this over and over again. Something that is pretty common, though, is a 12-bar blues form. Like you guys, I'm sure, know about the 12-bar blues. Like that's a pretty common thing. There's like tons of explanations on exactly what the 12-bar blues form is, but it's just a 12-bar form. And even if you've got tons and tons of like minutes worth of music, so you might have like a 9-minute BB King song, but it's just that same 12 bars over and over and over again. And there's going to be different variations in there and all that stuff. And this is where some people can get a little tripped up. So they'll see this like 9-minute BB King song and say, oh man, I have to learn 9 minutes worth of music. And you probably should check out at least some of the kind of bass lines that get played, but you don't necessarily have to play every single thing exactly like it is on the recording. Because like I think John or Rob was saying from before, like if BB King played that song like this the next night, it's going to be completely different. There's going to be similarities for sure. Like they're going to stay within the harmony. That the groove's probably going to be pretty similar. But as far as like how everything's put together, it might go from a 9-minute song to a 15-minute song. It might go from a 9-minute song down to a 4-minute song. They're like, I'm really not feeling that one tonight, and then just move on to the next one. Like there's heaps of variation in there. Now the next one is the through composed form, which is going to be trickier. So like this is where things don't repeat as much or like not at all. So like if you're playing in like a Dream Theater tribute band and you're playing like Metropolis Part 2, Scenes from a Memory, like you're gonna come across these forms that have much bigger chunks and there's a lot less repetition. There's always going to be some repetition, because if there was none, people would not be into it. Because there's nothing for the mind to kind of like latch onto. But like there's going to be repetition within the different sections, and then there's going to be repetition of whole sections as well. So this is going to be a little bit trickier, but always look for the common things. It's going to be way easier. Now that's the form. That's kind of the big picture stuff. That's going to make it easy to learn songs and learn how everything kind of fits together without going into the the nitty gritty of like this note goes here, this note goes there, blah 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 blah. Next, let's talk about the notes, and this is where you can start using the Nashville number system. Now, if you guys don't know the Nashville number system, I do have some links I can drop to you in the comments right now. I'm so prepared. I've got them all ready for you. So there, one I've just put in there is all about the Nashville number system, and this is a system that is the best place to start for learning songs and learning them really, really fast. So the basic premise is that you figure out the key and then convert every chord or note to a number. And now this can work for chord progressions and individual notes. So if you think about, let's think about the blues. So if you've got like a B flat blues, you're in the key of B flat. Now the blues is a little bit different because it's not kind of based on a quote unquote major scale. It's more modal, but it works in this context. And if you don't include the sevenths, then it doesn't really matter anyway. So let's just not include the sevenths for right now. So if you're in the key of B flat, obviously the B flat is going to be the 1 chord. Yeah. So if we do kind of based on the major scale, you can go from the B flat right here and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Just convert every note within that scale to a number. So B flat is going to be our 1, C is our 2, D, E flat, F, G, A, B. So 1, 2, D is 3, E flat 4, F 5, G 6, A 7, and then we're back to B flat, which is going to be the 1 again. Now I'm going pretty quickly here because this is I've just dropped the video and the link right there. Sorry, the link to the video in the chat right there. But this is how you can start figuring out songs even without a bass in your hand. So you can be like, okay, so that sounds like a 1 chord up to a 4 chord. Dun, dun, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 4. And then this might be the 5, 1, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got the 5 chord there. You might go to the 6, 5, 4, 2, 1, all that kind of stuff. This is tricky at the start because especially if you haven't really worked on much ear training stuff before, it's going to be a little bit trickier to convert numbers into notes into numbers and all that kind of stuff. But it is very possible, and I do have some more resources for you right here. I've got one that I'm dumping in the chat right now about how to figure out the key using just your ear. Like you don't need to know any like advanced theory or like anything like that. It's a very intuitive method. Definitely check that out if you need help figuring out the key. And then if you do want to start learning how to play by ear, the next one I'm dumping in is going to be really good for that. It's going to teach you how to start playing by ear. It's going to make a lot more sense. Now it says, reverse algebra, what is this sorcery? Yeah, totally. Yeah, fills into the Nashville numbers. That's awesome. Yeah, perfect. Okay, cool. So that's how you can get away with. I shouldn't say get away with, because you're not getting away with anything. You're playing the music just using a codified system that works really well for figuring out notes. Now, the other thing that we haven't really talked about sort of specifically is your ears. Now, your ears are the biggest asset it comes to when learning songs. Like your ears are the other things going to tell you, okay, this is a chorus, this is a verse, this is a bridge, this is, whatever it is. And it's also going to tell you, okay, this is, the 1 chord, this is the 6 chord, this is like all these kind of things. It's going to tell you basically everything you need to know. So they are your biggest asset when it comes to learning songs. And if you haven't started trying to learn how to use your ear in this way, I would highly, highly recommend it. The best way that I know how, and the way that I teach like all my students, is to start using your voice to start recreating notes, and then start mapping everything to different keys and all that stuff. There's like a whole process. But the first step is to just do things like this. Duh, like play a note, internalize it, and try to sing that same note. Duh, and you can go down here if you want to. That's totally fine as well. Or you can go up here if you want to. If you want to be real high, it's all that stuff is totally fine. Doesn't matter like if your voice is low, high. Doesn't matter if your voice kind of sucks. Like I'm not a good singer. Like no way am I a good singer. I can like do backing vocals if I'm like low in the mix. That's about it. But yeah, I'm like not a great singer, but I can use my voice to match pitch, and that's what I use to kind of start playing by ear. And that's exactly what I recommend you do as well. Now, I would love okay, this is interesting. Lavelle says, hey, I did that without knowing the Nashville system. I learned Born Under a Bad Sign by Albert King, but the key is different in the Cream version, but basically the same patterns. Exactly, yeah. If you learn the pattern, like you don't necessarily need to know like the ins and outs and specifics of like the Nashville number system notation and all that stuff. Like you can if you want, that's totally fine. But there's nothing that says that you absolutely have to do it in that specific way. That's totally fine. Yeah, I use the same numbers with a different root, totally. Oh, pardon me. Adam says, that's what I do, even though I can't sing well at all. Yeah, you don't need to be able to sing. That's totally, you just need to be able to match pitch. Like there's a very big difference between being a really good singer and being able to match pitch. Like I'm not a good singer, but I can match pitch. Most of the time. Sometimes I struggle. I'm like, oh wait, is that? And then sometimes I'll like listen back of like recordings of gigs and stuff. I'll be like, oh man, I was way sharp on that. Like it's always sharp for me for some reason. For some reason, I just always kind of go a bit sharp. But that's just me. John says, move back to the Southern USA so I can take lessons from you. I mean, maybe. Who knows what's in the cards? I don't know. Now, there was one thing when it comes to learning songs. I thought about this story before, but I didn't remember it in the right time. The goal for like learning songs, and not necessarily transcription, because transcription is a different game. Like learning things note for note and like exactly how things are on the recording. That's a very different game. And I like to relate it to learning languages. So my partner is Brazilian, so she speaks Portuguese. So I'm like very slowly learning more and more Portuguese. And it's really funny because she has immaculate English. Like it's very, very good. And she gets like self-conscious sometimes, like, oh, I'm not sure my English is very good. And it's like perfect. It's like, it's so good. But my Portuguese in comparison to her English is like, my Portuguese is so bad. Like my grammar is horrible. Like my pronunciation is pretty bad. Like I'll say something and be like, scale of 1 to 10, how gringo was that? And she'll be like, oh yeah, it was pretty gringo. But it's like, it's totally fine because I'm not necessarily going for transcription. I'm just going to be I just want to be understood. I just want to get the essence of what I'm trying to communicate across. And it goes back to what Rob was saying before. You want to capture the essence of the song, not necessarily, the exact carbon copy replica of the song. And that's what I do with language. I aim to be understood rather than like have perfect immaculate grammar and like pronunciation and stuff. And like if I like met someone like really important, like I'd probably want to work on that a bit more. Like if I was like meeting the equivalent of the Queen in Brazil or like in Portugal or something, like I would want to like fix my grammar and like make sure that I could be properly understood. But if I'm just like hanging out with my partner, we're chilling on the couch, I'm like saying stupid stuff, like making jokes, I don't need to be like have 100% appropriate grammar and like sentence structure and like conjugation of verbs. Like that stuff doesn't matter. All I need to do is be understood, and that's exactly what you need to do when it comes to learning songs. Now, Hoyle asks, what kind of strings do you recommend, flat or round? Yes, either is fine. Go with what you like. Yes, but can you play Despacito? No, I actually that's a really interesting question. That song was like huge, but none of like the corporate bands that I've ever played in ever play that song. So I don't know if it's like a regional thing, if people like play that song on gigs other places, but I have never played it on a gig. So yeah. Have this is a good question. Have you ever taken a classic song and changed the bass line completely and it sounded as good, if not better than the original? This is a tricky one. I mean, I can never say like whether like something I created is going to be good, like as good or better than the original. Like that's not my call to make. But I've like arranged songs in ways that I really liked and I really enjoyed. But you know, to say whether it's better or not, I don't know. Actually, if you go to I'll drop the link here. I've got an album up on Bandcamp. I created like this arrangement of it's like a mashup of Beyonce's Crazy in Love and Niles Barkley's Crazy. And I thought it was really cool. I really enjoyed it. I wouldn't say that it's better than like Beyonce's Crazy in Love. Like that's a classic. Like I couldn't be like, oh yeah, Beyonce was good and everything. But have you heard my version of the song? Like there's no way I'd say the same with Niles Barkley. Like I'm never going to say that like something I've created is going to be better than theirs. It's going to be different. It's going to like I enjoyed. I think the guys playing on it sound amazing. But I would never say that what I've created is better. This is interesting. I did not know this. Billie Eilish has said her favorite instrument is bass. I would believe that. Like the the name of her album's like super long. Something about sleeping and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's like super bass heavy. It's interesting. I like it. Okay, you're talking about Despacito. Yeah, totally. Okay, this is really interesting. R says, bought a Washburn bass last year. I learned my first song for 10 months. The song was Don't Speak by No Doubt. I learned it through a chat tutorial from YouTube. Now I'm stuck. Okay, that's totally fine. Pick another song that you love. Now, if your first song took 10 months, I bet you could do the next song way, way quicker than that, especially using the stuff that we talked about today. Like Don't Speak is, I can't remember exactly how that song goes in terms of form, but I guarantee you it's got a verse, it's got a chorus. I'm pretty sure there's a bridge in there. I'd have to listen to the song again to be sure, but you can absolutely use this stuff to chunk down and learn the song a lot quicker. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. If you've learned your first song is always the hardest. Like the first song is going to be the most tricky thing you do at the start. Every song after that's going to be easier and easier. Same with any kind of skill. Like you do it right once the first time, and then every time after that's going to get easier and easier. Well, there is this one famous story of a diving instructor, or like there was this person who was a really good diver. Like diving at the Olympics, they like jump off the 10-meter platforms into the water, and they're supposed to make like no splash. And there's judges going 9.7, all that kind of stuff. Apparently, there was this kid who was doing like quadruple somersaults or whatever. It's like this thing that shouldn't technically be possible. Like no one's ever done it before. And these like people came around and like because they'd heard about this kid who can do this like crazy stuff. And they told the kid, like, this shouldn't be possible. Like no one's ever done this before. And then he stopped being able to do it because he had this thing like, oh shit, this shouldn't be possible. So for some reason I can't do it. So yeah, it's like the opposite of what I'm saying. So, but this is not the case there, because obviously you've learned your first song. Songs are possible. Like it's possible to learn songs. So you can learn the first one, you can learn the second one. It's gonna be way quicker and all that kind of stuff. Okay, this is. I'm using the Nashville number system, but I'm stuck on the 7th. I can do minor and major triads for the others, but how do I do the dominant 7th? The dominant 7th is only ever going to be on the 5 chord. If you're talking about the upper extensions of every chord, then it's going to be a little bit different. So, for example, if like the major chord, actually, I'll go a bit of this one. I'll just get rid of your question real quick, Matthew, so you can see the whole bass. Let's do it in C, so make things nice and easy. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So if you're talking about like all the sevenths, you're like doing the 1 chord's obviously going to be major, 1, 3, 5. The 7th is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's going to be a major 7 right there. So that makes this first chord a C major 7. But the dominant 7, like the 5, it's obviously a major triad with a minor 7 on top. Okay. You're talking about like the 7 chord. Like you're talking about like there's the 1 chord, 2 chord, 3 chord, 4 chord, 5 chord, 6 chord, the 7 chord. You're talking about that one specifically. If that's the case, then it's going to be either a diminished triad if you're talking about like the lower just kind of bass triad. So it's going to be this. Da, da, da. B, D, F. But if you're talking about like the full 7th chord, you're going to put an A on top of that. So it's going to be da, ba, ba, da, A, da, ba, ba, ba. Makes it a B minor 7 flat 5 or a B half diminished chord. It's a little bit different for sure. Now, if you did have Matthew, if you did have other questions about that, I'm not sure if that's the question you're asking. Just keep hassling me in the chat, and I'll try and answer it as best as I can. This is cool. Tragic Kingdom in 16 tone were the first CDs I bought. Californication was the first song I think pulled off on bass. 95% of it. Yeah, awesome. That's the Chili Peppers stuff. Have great bass lines. It's awesome. Now, Terry says, my biggest challenge playing a song was Bon Jovi's Living on a Prayer. Yeah, you have to keep practicing the song because of the different shift changes. Yeah, there's a key change in there as well, which can makes things a little bit trickier. Although if you are doing things with the Nashville number system, it becomes very easy to change keys. So you can think of like being 6, 4, 5, da, 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 1, 4, 5. This is in the chorus. 6, 4, 5. Da, 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 da. And then we go up a minor third. So we end up going. So we essentially go up to the key of. So if we started in like the key of G, we end up in the key of B flat, which means our first chord is going to be a G minor, which is the 6 of B flat major. So it's the same thing. 1, 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 1, 4, 5, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, totally makes it a little bit trickier. But if you do know like the underlying structure of the song and how it's all put together, it's totally fine. Dale asks Roman numerals instead in place of Nashville numbers. Yeah, some people do this. I think it's like a holdover from like classical like music theory analysis. But that's totally fine. Like you can use like just regular numbers if you want, or you can use Roman numerals. The one thing that Roman numerals does have that you can't really do with like regular numbers is you can do like a lowercase 1 is going to be a minor chord, whereas an uppercase 1 is going to be a major chord. So for example, if you were in the key of, let's stay in the key of C, and you had, for example, C, A minor, D minor, G7, that's going to be like a 1, 6, 2, 5. You can just write 1, 6, 2, 5, like the number 1, the number 2, the number 6, the number 5. But what if for example, the 6th chord was a major chord or a dominant chord? It becomes a little bit trickier to kind of write that. So, but if you're using like 1, like the Roman numeral 1, and we had like VI, yeah, instead of being like a lowercase VI for 6, you can make it an uppercase VI, and that's going to be a major chord or a major triad. Okay, Matthew's got some clarification of the question before. I meant I can do chords for 1 to 4, but get stuck when I get to the 7 chord. Yeah, the 7 chord very rarely actually gets used. There's like a couple of examples in like pop music, like Eric Clapton's song "Change the World," where it's got it's in C sharp minor. I can be the sunshine in your universe, and that one there. I can be the sunshine in your universe. A 7 chord right there, but it's pretty much always that chord is always in the context of a 2-5-1 in a minor key. So in that case, we're in C sharp minor, and it's a 2 chord. And then it goes to the 5, and then it resolves back to the C sharp. So yeah, if you're not like super confident with the 7 chord, it's totally fine. It hardly ever gets used. But you do the answer to your question is if you just use the bottom 3 notes, it's going to be a diminished triad. So it's going to be if we stay. Let's go back to the key of C. It'll make things a bit easier. Instead it's going to be that B, C, B, D, F, da, da, da. But if you do add that top note, it's going to be that A, which makes it a half diminished chord, a -7 flat 5, or a half diminished chord. I don't know why they call actually, I do know why they call it a half diminished chord, because a fully diminished chord is going to be all minor thirds. Da, 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 da. Whereas the half diminished chord is going to have the higher note there. Da. Yeah, totally. Rob asks who actually plays chords on the bass. Check out a guy named Otil Burbridge. Man, plays some of the coolest stuff, like chord stuff on bass. He plays with the Allman Brothers band, and he has like a whole bunch of solo stuff as well. Yeah, check him out, Otil Burbridge. Total badass for sure. Dale's asking different symbol sets, same theory. One set has a larger range of transcription. Are you talking about, I think, the number 1 versus the Roman numeral 1? Yeah, sort of. Yeah, definitely. Stefanescu says, I try to play chords, but I need more practice. Yeah, chords. I mean, I've got a whole series on like a whole free series about bass chords on the site. It's like, they're fun, and they are good for acclimatizing your ear to different sounds. So it's like it's one thing to like hear, okay, someone's playing a major chord. I like understand intellectually that sounds like a major chord. It's very different to be like, I'm playing a major chord and it sounds like that. Yeah, Dale says Victor Wooten. Yeah, again plays a bunch of chords as well. And it's I play bass chords. Do these ones. What are we doing? Okay, yeah. Okay, this is an interesting question. How do I become a pro bassist? You play bass professionally. That's the you have a gig where someone will I guess, I mean, one metric could be that you get paid to play bass. One metric could be that other people think you're a pro bassist. All that kind of stuff. If you're asking specifically like the process, the steps on how to get there, that's going to be different for every single person. So I came through it because I became like my first professional bass playing gig was at this dirty bar called Maguire's in Mackay, if you know that place. It's like this tiny place, like fights breaking out all the time. They tried to redo it a couple of years ago, but it was still like this real scummy bar. It was hilarious. So I started playing off bass there when there was like this local band whose bass player couldn't do like a weekend worth of gigs. So they're like, they knew I played bass like casually. Like I was like 16 or 17. I hadn't been playing bass that long, but like, Mackay's a small place, and these guys didn't really know anyone else. So they're like, hey, Luke, can you play this gig on the weekend? They asked me on like a Monday. The first gig was on like a Friday night. They gave me this list of like how many songs. I'm like, shit. So I have to like learn all these songs like really, really quickly. And they paid me like $175. So I'm like, yeah, that's amazing. So I guess that would be my like first professional paying gig. But other people come through it very differently. Other people start in like family bands, and like money doesn't come into it until like after they might have been playing music for 10 plus years and never made a cent from it, but they could still be classified as being quote unquote professional bassists. As far as how to build up your skills on the bass, like absolutely do that. If you want to get to that level of being a quote unquote professional, then you absolutely need to have the skills to be able to do that. So you need to have first of all, you have to have good technique so you don't mess up yourself when you're playing. You need to be able to groove really well. Playing by ear is going to be super helpful. You need to know how to get through songs. You need to be a good person as well, because no one is going to want to gig with someone who is a prick. Yeah, like if you're no fun to hang out with on the break, you're going to get replaced with someone who is, even if they're not a good player as you. Like that's I've seen this happen. Like people can be amazing musicians, but because of their personality, they don't get called for gigs because they're going to be more trouble than they're worth. So not only do you have to become a good bassist, you have to become, if you're not already ready, a good person. And that might be the harder part. I don't know. I don't know what you're like, but that's what I would recommend is those things specifically are going to be really, really helpful. So technique for you, groove for everyone else. Learning to play by ear is going to make things way easier. Learning how to get through songs and being a good person. Like those would be the 5 things at the very start that I would focus on if I were you, for sure. This is awesome. Jane says, thanks so much for sharing your knowledge and talent with us. I'm a beginner, 3 months now. I've learned so much from you and you make it fun. Yes, awesome. I love that. I hope in 3 months' time, you're going to be like even more further along the path. That's going to be super, super awesome. Yeah, I'm so glad that you're like playing bass now. That's awesome. This is super interesting. At first, Victor made me feel sad when I looked at my bass after seeing the lesson. Now I watched it and I know it's practice and determination. Yes, exactly. It's very, very easy when you see people who are like very good at what they do to be super discouraged about, you know, how far along they are versus you. But it's not about that. Like this is the wrong way of approaching it. And Dale looks like he's like turned the corner and he's like seeing the light now, which is awesome. But you don't want to like, I have this conversation pretty frequently with like people through the email list and all that kind of stuff, but they'll see other people who like the common one nowadays is, like, did you see that like 9-year-old kid on Instagram who plays bass? Like he's only 9 years old and he can do all that stuff. I'm like, I've only just started when I'm like X years old, like I might be 65 years old. What's even the point? But it's not about like comparing like this person versus me or this other person versus me. It's compare yourself to the bass player you were yesterday or last week, last month, last year. Like Jane, who just started 3 months ago, do you think she looks at Victor Wooten and says, "Oh, well, he's been playing for many years, so I may as well give up"? No, it's not like that. It's like, wow, I didn't know how to do any of this 3 months ago, and now I can, do X, I can do Y, I can play this song that I've always loved. I can like play along with my favorite recording, or I can maybe even, have a little jam session with friends, or maybe even think about, having a real life paying gig, maybe playing at a church on Sundays. I guess that's not really a thing right now. But when that comes back, it might be a thing. You might be, might do some remote recording, using the kind of videos I've talked about that. Yeah, so it's absolutely true that you want to, compare yourself to the bass player you were versus the bass player that someone else currently is or was or anything like that. Yeah, totally. Oh yeah, there's a bunch of people talking about how you shouldn't be a prick on a gig. Yeah, John knows. This is another thing. Yeah, don't be flaky. Show up to practice and gigs on time. Yeah, and show up to rehearsals with your parts learned. This is something that gives me the absolute so annoying. Like people come to rehearsal and they're learning parts in rehearsal. No, you don't do that. That's not how a professional does things. You come to rehearsal to rehearse. You don't come to rehearsal to learn your parts. Learn the parts before rehearsal. Oh my God. My partner's laughing. Man. Yeah, this is a good point as well. Rob says I can't remember the guy's name, the really young guy on Instagram playing bass. Kid would have gone viral because they're the exception. Yeah, exactly. Totally. Yeah, I started 10 months ago and I'm 34. Yeah, this is totally a thing. Like late starters, quote unquote late starters. Like I didn't start playing bass till I was 16. And there's like, stories of people starting when they're like 2 and 3 years old. Man, I didn't pick up a bass until I was 16. I didn't even know what a bass was. No, I knew what a bass was. But yeah, age is not necessarily like a barrier. Like and it's not necessarily a thing that is an impediment either. No matter what, like how old someone is when they come to me, like I'm going to be teaching them roughly the same things. I'm going to be communicating in a different way, obviously. Like it's very different teaching like an 8-year-old kid versus someone who's like had 70 years of life so far. Like obviously the communication is going to be different, but the content is going to be roughly the same. Thomas says, I teach AP Psych, that too. That's awesome. Yeah. A humanist. Yeah, just be the best you. Is that what that is? Okay, I didn't know that, but that's good to know. I will brand myself as Luke from Become a Bassist, humanist. This is awesome, Solomon. Thank you so much. You really helped me on a bass playing. There is one thing I want you to help me develop, which is slap bass. Check out the last 3 videos on the YouTube channel. They're all about slap bass. Start with the one that says that's called the first slap bass lesson every beginner needs to know. It goes over like super basic technique. That's the first thing you need to do, and then like you can jump into learning some songs and then like fixing up some tone stuff. And if you have specific questions, just send me an email at luke@becomeabassist.com. I'd be more than happy to help out. Now, this is awesome. John says he started live gigs last weekend here. Yes, awesome. I haven't done any like proper gigs yet, but I did like a virtual streaming concert from my living room, like just through there. Me and a guitarist buddy came over, and we had a very socially distant set. We played like a couple of songs, one of my songs, one of his songs. Yeah, awesome. Okay, let's see. Where are we? Now, Domingo says, I'm trying to figure the bass line of a music, un velero, il mado, liberdad. Sorry, I'm guessing this is Spanish. I can't I can't really speak it that well. And I can't play the bass line, only the roots. Thank you for your time. Yeah, okay, so if you've got the roots down, that's perfect. That's a perfect first step. The next step is figuring out when the roots are being played versus something different. And when it's something different, are the notes like around the roots? Are they above the roots? Are they below the roots? And if they're above or below, how far? Is it like is it 4 frets, 3 frets? And when does it change? If you have the roots, you have like a skeleton, you have the structure that you can hang everything off. It makes things very, very easy. So I would argue that you've like done the hard part already. This is like totally doable if you've already got the roots. Now, if there are some tools you can use that make things easier to hear if the bass line isn't super prominent, things like Transcribe work really well. Or you can even do the same thing in like Audacity, but Audacity's like, I don't like Audacity that much. But it's free, you know. Transcribe is like a free trial, but like it's a paid software. I would recommend definitely using Transcribe if you want to figure out some bass lines that are hard to hear. It's going to make a really big difference. Okay, this is interesting. I'm like learning more every time I do one of these streams. Humanism is all about potential. Just be the best you and don't compare yourself to others. Yeah, in that case, I'm absolutely a humanist. Yeah, I believe in this 100%. I had no idea, but that's I guess that's what I am. Awesome. All right, so let's wrap it up there today. You guys have been awesome. You've been like saying like really good questions and asking really good stuff and contributing a lot. So that's awesome. I really appreciate you guys sticking around because we've been going for like nearly an hour now, which is these streams always fly by for me. So thank you so much for sticking around. Hope wherever you are in the world, you are doing really well. If you guys have any questions or things that you want to talk about, I'm always available at luke@becomeabassist.com. If you're not already on the Become a Bassist email list, head on over there and just sign up for one of the free things. There's like a bunch of free stuff. You can get like tabs for songs or like guides to modes or fretboards and scales and all that kind of stuff. Just search around there. I'm sure you're bound to find something that you'll enjoy. But in the meantime, I'll sign off for now and talk to you guys really soon. Once